Hello, here we are. I can start the video even. Hello, Andre. Long time.
Time no see. Yeah,
It's
I mean,
really. I don't think we did a Skype call like this or like a Zoom call for a long time. It was always calling. I haven't seen your appearance.
well, last time we met, it was in Rio, right?
Yes, I remember. That was a long time ago.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was a good time. I think we had a beer, and
Absolutely, yes.
a whole different a different setting.
Yes, a whole different setting, both politically and like environmental wise.
Yeah, and virally. I think you are working from home all the time, or are you going to?
For many years, yes, I usually do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very common for me to work from home. For me,
Yeah.
it's okay. But the city now gets a little bit like gloomy, a little bit sad, with this pandemic thing. Now it's look who's there. It's wonderful. This is Monica. I want you to meet us. She's going to debate with us.
Okay.
She's a very, very dear friend.
Hello, Monica. Nice to meet you.
She's connecting.
Yeah. She's part of your staff there, or is she also?
No, she's part. I mean, we're friends. She's the coordinator of this working group at the school that who's housing this interview today. She's my boss, as it were.
Oh.
And
I'll behave.
But it's not nowadays, to be a boss, it's not about the authority, it's about the responsibility. She has all the responsibility, and regarding authority, well, I don't know, we're friends, right?
Well, that's always good to work.
She's the one who has all the responsibility, and I do my best to help her. See?
Yeah, no, that's good. And you together you organize these kind of guest lectures in a way, or
yes, there is this thing. How can I say? The issue at stake that we're talking here, which is participative dynamics and the way it. Hi, Monica. Did you connect now? We lost her. Okay, she should be here any minute. This thing like participative dynamics, and how do you relate that with public governance it's a very how can I say, used to be a very sidelined subject. Hi there.
Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. How are you doing?
For me, it's definitely afternoon, almost evening. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Yeah,
I'm very happy to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I was just introduced to you when you were connecting the audio by Andre. So I hear you are the boss.
No, actually. We don't necessarily have a boss here. We have a shared governance. So, or at least I want to believe so. And actually, this has been all. For example, this event particularly has been mostly organized or completely organized by Andre. And wow, it's true, Andre.
No, it was a joke. It was a kind
that's
of.
That's what I said.
I have a flat.
We have a shared governance, but she has all the responsibilities. See?
That was it.
Well, if it goes wrong, yes.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, if you don't have a good audience, actually the blame is on me. And but this all the success is Andres' success. So
No, come on.
definitely sure.
No, my dear, you're very important in this whole thing. It's not true.
Well,
So
I'm
can you hear
happy
me
to
well?
to be part of this of the lectures, and I look forward to it. And
So
Great.
as I was saying, so this issue, which is participative governance, used to be like a side subject, and with the advent of climate change and this the need for more complex governance to tackle complex development issues became the central subject. So to think about development of the territory in sector, by transportation and things separately, doesn't work anymore. I mean, when you have a flood or even a social commotion, people started to get involved. So people like us, this is Hockey Verlangi. Hockey just arrived. Hockey is one of the main creators of participative budgeting in Brazil and in the world. I mean, Hockey has a great legacy towards democracy, which is incredible. It's a great honor to have him here.
Yes, so, great. You told me a little bit about him. I wouldn't have pronounced his name the way you do if I read it, but you say Hockey, right?
Right.
Barely.
Okay.
Hockey.
Nice
Barely.
And well, so this issue about participative governance is becoming more and more central, and so this group which Monica put together tried to register and she called and registered almost 50 people working along this area of knowledge for the last 1.5 years or 2 years. So this is very interesting because we could meet each other, we could get to know about each other's work, and it's very, very interesting because there are a couple of lines that are starting to connect all of them. And the idea about bringing you here is that, well, your work is central, it's wonderful, and it has more than 10 years, right?
Yeah, definitely. We are now well, we have been around for 10 years, a little bit more, but indeed I think it's very interesting to hear from you, Andre, and also Monica, that you bring together the different disciplines within this participative democracy, or it's a whole spectrum that could work together towards a more positive representation of citizens and their involvement in the governance processes. And I would love to be from the media or data side to be part of any kind of group that thinks on a broad scale on these things. So I'm very happy you brought me in. I know we've been in touch for so many years now, and well, great to see that we are taking these steps. And I'm very, very interested also to hear what the other members within this ecosystem have done, and to maybe see how the different perspectives or the different ways of work, how they connect, because I think it's such a big thing that nobody can tackle it alone. It's only through collaboration that we can actually create this whole framework where we can actually make that change and experiment, I guess, because that's a big part of what needs to be done in this sense.
Olá, boa tarde a todos. Bem-vindo ao laboratório Arq.Futuro de Cidades do Insper, ao GT de Desenvolvimento Territorial. Essa é a série Decolonizando Memória e Tecnologia. E hoje falaremos de mediação participativa na escala regional. O nosso convidado é Walter Dijkstra, antropólogo e empreendedor social com mais de 10 anos de experiência e trabalho na produção de mídia e pesquisa na África e América do Sul. Hábil em pesquisa social, tecnologia para governo, jornalismo, silvicultura, gestão de ONGs e modelos de negócios inovadores, assuntos africanos. Tem interesse em especial em silvicultura e na história do Império Romano. É CEO da organização Arq.Org. No programa de hoje, eu vou fazer uma pequena apresentação. O Walter vai falar do trabalho dele e também temos a satisfação de receber aqui Mônica Pinhanes e o Roque Verlang, debatedores, que vão discutir um pouco do assunto que a gente conversou. Os CVs da Mônica e do Roque estão presentes nos outros vídeos da série, então resolvi não passar tudo de novo aqui. A nossa conversa de hoje vai ser sobre mediação participativa em escala regional, e esse assunto já foi tratado rapidamente no primeiro vídeo, e a ideia é saber como que a participação social e a circulação de informação podem subsidiar processos de governança em escala regional e deixar legados, criar legados de dados e de experiências, que possam facilitar gestão regional e gestão de governo. Well, Walter, the floor is yours. Please be welcome. You have like 30 minutes, then Monica and Rock will comment, and that's it. And we carry on.
Thank you very much, Andre. For everybody who's watching, thank you for watching. My name indeed is Wouter Dijkstra. I'm from the Netherlands. And I've agreed with Andre that in this session, at least, I'm very open to also interact. So if there's any questions during my presentation, please feel free to step in to ask for some more detail or ask different questions so that we can address those as we go along. I am indeed the founder and the director of Track FM International. My background is anthropology, and I will tell something more about our work. At first, how did we get to where we are, and why are we doing what we do? So to start off, I would like to say once more, thank you for having me. Track FM is an organization based in the Netherlands. We have been around for 10 years, but most of our work is done in East Africa. Our main office is in Uganda, in Kampala. And from there, we have produced many radio debates that try to involve listeners in the discussion on radio. Our goal is to represent citizens that normally are very hard to reach and have a little chance to interact and be part of the larger public debate. I think the best way to start off is to give you a little bit of an overview of how it works, and then later I will get to how we actually got to where we are, because otherwise you don't know what I'm talking about all the time. And for that, I would like to show you a short video, which is a 2-minute introduction to Track FM, and I hope it will give you a better view of how we work. So I will share my screen and show you this 2-minute video, and then later I will come back and tell you something more. Here we go. Hope this works very well. I put it here. We can do it here. I hope you can all see my screen.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to your favorite radio show.
I'm seeing you, but not the video.
That's not the way we have to do this. Sometimes we... This is...
Yeah, I have your screen.
My screen. Well, let me do it this way then. You see the full screen now?
Yes.
Welcome to your favorite radio show. My name is OJ, and let me tell you more about our program with Track FM. Track FM is a platform that works with live radio to give people a voice. They train radio stations to host debates about relevant topics for local communities. Let me show you how. Ladies and gentlemen, for this week's question, what should be the priority in spending of Uganda's national budget? Should it be in healthcare, education, or roads? Our listeners hear Track FM's questions through their radios, all in their local language. Like Maria, who wants government to build a clinic nearby. She can answer by sending an SMS to our toll-free number. Most people have a mobile phone, so we get thousands of answers to each poll. And what happens with these answers? Well, that's the beauty of it. The Track FM software instantly organizes all these answers into graphics. We immediately see the poll results and know if our listeners prefer government spending on healthcare above roads. We can also see the gender of our respondents and the district they are from. We directly discuss these poll results with our specialist guests and ask them to reflect on the issues at play in our communities. When the live discussion is finished, Track FM takes it even further. They combine poll results from radio stations all over the country to create reports and infographics. Topics can range from political debates on land laws to discussions on medicine stockouts, and even shows to help farmers increase productivity. Together with civil society partners, Track FM presents these reports to decision makers and urges them to listen to what people have to say. Years of experience show that Track FM's method gets people talking about important issues in their community and makes a significant difference in getting our leaders to take up the citizens' perspective. That's why many civil society organizations, NGOs, and research groups choose to partner up with Track FM. As individual citizens, we might not always be able to reach our government officials, but together, we can make our voices heard.
Yes. Well, this was a short video that might give you a good introduction to what we do. We are working in 5 different countries at the moment. We have recently started moving outside of, let's see.
You can stop sharing now. It's in the red button on top of your screen. Go there, up, rather on the top. Yeah.
Here we go.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so we are in 5 different countries, in 4 in East Africa, and 1 is we recently started making shows in Nepal. And I've been working with Andre to try to get Track FM to Brazil, but this is so far it's work in progress. Let's say it that way. Now the background of Track FM. Basically, what we want to do is to give people an opportunity to discuss issues that are relevant to them and collect their voices in such a way that we can present it to local governments, to central governments, to represent those people who normally have difficulty being represented. They are allowed to vote once in 4 or 5 years, and that's the only way they take part in the political system. And we feel that that is not enough. People should be part of the debate, but also of decision-making processes way more. And one of those ways is through what we've seen through radio, interactive radio. In Uganda, we started with research. I was doing 10 years ago. It was for my master's thesis. So for all the students out there, please feel that from your work you are doing now already can spring something which is bigger than that, where you can actually use your knowledge to practically develop something. As a piece of history, 10 years ago, I went to studying new media and digital culture in the Netherlands. And for my thesis, I went to Uganda to study how new media, so mobile phones, internet, these kind of things, how they impacted on the political process in Uganda. Being there, I found that there was a lot of use of mobile phones during radio debates. The mobile phone was an upcoming thing in 2010, and mobile phones allowed people to call into radio stations. Normally they would just listen. Radio would be a one-way street, receiving information. But now with the mobile phone coming up, people were able to call in. What we saw is that there's a lot of people who wanted to call in, but during a radio talk show, there's maybe 3, 4, 5 people who can actually get through to the radio station, because a radio show is maybe 1 hour, and you can't allow many more people to call in. And during my time visiting all these radio stations and sitting in with talk shows, I also saw that presenters would just read the front of the newspaper and then say, okay, you can now call in and say whatever you want. So people would not really focus on the topic that was at hand, but would just call in and talk about their personal stuff or their political views. So I developed an idea on how can we make this interaction between mobile phone and radio stations, how can we make that more structured, and how can we allow more people to participate at the same time? And that's where the idea for Track FM came up. It is a software tool that is used by radio stations to allow people to vote on poll questions. So during a radio debate or a radio show, there will be one poll question which asks, for instance, what do you think the national budget should be spent on? Or what do you think our local budgets should be spent on? Should be on healthcare, on roads, or maybe on education? This is just one example of a poll question. And all the listeners to the radio station can listen in and use their mobile phone to send in a free SMS text message to participate in this poll question. Now, when they send in an SMS message, the radio presenter on his screen in his studio, he sees exactly what people are voting for. Are they voting for healthcare or education, or roads or security? And he can use this data immediately during his talk show. So we make sure that we invite local leaders or others to come to the studio, and for the presenter to present the views of listeners to those studio guests, which makes people feel part of the debate. Instead of just listening, they are now part of the debate, and it's structured in such a way that many people at the same time can participate in this debate. Overall, what we can see in many different radio stations is that between 1,000 and 5,000 people will participate in a good radio station to participate in this poll question. So you will get, well, maybe 2,000 people who actually add their opinion to the during the show, and this gives us a lot of well, representation of listeners, but at the same time it gives data that helps us develop campaigns. It's, as you might know, if you would see research done in very remote parts of Africa, for instance, or maybe the Amazon, it's very expensive to do any kind of survey in very remote places, and that's why it doesn't happen so often. So, yeah.
And Walter, and how many responses we're talking about? I mean, and what kind of scales do you work with?
Yeah, so like I said, if we're talking about one radio station, we can get between 1,000 and 4,000 people who participate. What we do in countries where we are more active, we work with several radio stations throughout the country. Like in Uganda, we have a network of about 10 radio stations, all presenting these polls in the local language. So for each poll, we could get 10 to 20,000 people within a day who participate in these poll questions. And a sample size of 20,000 people is quite significant, and it allows us to actually use that data to advocate for what people have to say. You have to know that not only do we get the responses to the poll question, we can also ask people if they're male or female, which age groups they are, but also in which particular district they are sending their answers from. So we get a lot of additional data.
And how long does a campaign take? I mean, like 6 months, 2 months?
Well, in this structure, we can say that, let's see, that we have different kind of campaigns. At Track FM, we always work in partnership with other organizations. And if we would have a campaign, we would be able to have campaigns that run for a year or even for 2 months. Those are. I just wanted to. Are you seeing my screen now, or is it you're seeing me?
No, not yet.
Not yet. I wanted to show you the.
And your commissioner, is it like local NGOs or government most of the times? How does that work?
Well, the way it works, we've of course been working for this for quite some years. We have different structures. We've worked with donors directly who provide us with funding, so we develop our own programs. At the same time, we also do assignments. One of the assignments, for instance, was for a research group who wants to know how people are using fertilizer in their daily lives in Uganda and Kenya. There's very few people who are actually using non-organic fertilizer, which would increase their yield, for instance. There's a lot of stigma around using this kind of fertilizer, and they wanted to know why don't people want to use this kind of fertilizer? Is it maybe too expensive? Do they feel it's bad for the soil, or is it impossible to obtain in their area? So when creating such a campaign, we create 3 or 4 or 5 poll questions, and every week we have another poll question coming on, asking people of that area why they are not using fertilizer, what if they have ever used fertilizer. These kind of questions together form one campaign. So the 5 poll questions, this campaign takes 5 weeks, and all the data we receive from it, we put together in a report, sit down with our partner and analyze the data. We see the gender data, the age groups, the different districts where we get this data from. And at the end, we try to analyze this data in such a way that they understand why people in such an area don't use fertilizer. This is one example. Another example is a big campaign that lasted for a year that went into disability rights. So this is more of a political way. So on the one hand, you see, okay, we have a more agriculture focused, but our main focus is always a little bit more politically or socially focused. On this program on disability rights, it was a 1-year program. We asked 10 different poll questions throughout the year, and used all this data to work together with our partner to present to the government, to the Ministry of Health, and to actually show that there was little awareness, for instance, on mental disability compared to physical disabilities, or that there was still very little access to public buildings for ramps, for instance. And because we collected that data from, well, in total, I think 200,000 people participated in these poll questions, we could present it to the Ministry of Health, saying, okay, these ramps are in these areas, there's lack of ramps, or there's lack of awareness on mental disability. So there should be, well, more awareness creation on that. So this was taken up by the ministry, and of course, we were part of a bigger program, but it eventually changed some laws, or some the Disability Rights Act in Uganda. It was altered based on this. When we started lobbying with this data, our partner, which was an umbrella organization on disability rights, could use that data in their reporting or their presentations to say, okay, we are not just guessing this, but we actually have data to back it up. And we've collected this from so many people. That is one example of how we use the data. to do advocacy. One of the even bigger impacts we are trying to make is less tangible, because we of course try to get people to come out and be more vocal about certain things, to make them understand that they should be part of the public debate to make changes. There's a lot of people who believe that their voice does not count, because very often it doesn't. They get ignored. But if they understand that their voice matters in the end, and if they are more able to articulate what they think, that will help the broader structure or the fabric of society. And that's why we try to involve people in the debates that go on the radio station, and also make it more data driven, so that instead of people just giving opinions here and opinions there, we try to collect the opinions in these poll questions and actually present it as data, so that after the talk show, people can actually say, this is the percentage who thinks A, this is the percentage who thinks B, and try to take that up in their own way of conversation as well. I would like to say one example of such a thing, of very small changes that we get from making these radio shows, is an example of a lady in somewhere in the village of Lira, which is far away in northern Uganda. We had our campaign on land rights. There's a big issue on land rights. Maybe you have the same in Brazil. I guess it's another big country. So these land rights, they are not well understood, and there's a lot of people who take advantage of people who don't know their land rights. For instance, if you don't register your land in a certain way, it is very easy for other people to take it from you. If there's just an agreement between families, then it is not registered. So people, and especially women, you see that they lose their land because of they are not aware how to register their land. So as part of this land rights campaign, we had a lot of explanations on how do you register land, and also get people to really participate in the discussion. One of our listeners and participants started registering her own land, and through creating that awareness, because she participated, she became active in like, okay, well, I've said I want to register my land, let me now also try to do this. And by doing that, she eventually registered her land, but also her neighbors came to her asking, like, how did you register your land? It went on from there, and now she's part of the land registration of her parish. It's still a very small village, setting, but still, because she started to feel like, okay, my voice counts, my participation is important. These little changes we make, it starts to get into the fabrics of society, and especially with radio, and that's why we are using radio. You reach millions, maybe with a small message, instead of a very targeted approach, but at least you get a lot of people to participate in these talk shows, and also to be part of the conversation.
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm interrupting you because since you're talking, so we can make it more dynamic, yeah. As you said. Sorry, I mean, would you like to show something, or can I give the ball to
Yeah,
Monica.
I was. I'm very sorry that I normally use a different. I created slides here, and I wanted to show them to you.
Sure, please.
I am not sure if you're seeing them now.
Yes.
Yes, we are, but it's not
Yeah.
full screen.
No, that's possible too. Yeah. Okay,
There you
here
go.
we are. Thank you. It was a bit of a hassle here. Well, I've discussed this. Here you see these radio presenters with in the background the overview of the poll results, which they will use during their talk shows to give feedback to listeners, to say, okay, this is what people have voted for. And to start this discussion with the guest in the studio. The lady to the left is a local politician who will then respond to the results that just came in. This is an overview of how normally this public engagement happens in East Africa, in Uganda. People sit under a tree and discuss issues, and this is symbolic for how we want to take this kind of discussion, this public debate, which is so important, to a more a digital, more widespread level through radio and SMS, because those are the technologies most used in Uganda. This is a radio presenter, one of our radio presenters in Uganda. And this is the people we are targeting. Maybe it's good to have a bit of a idea of who are those people we try to reach out to. This is one of our participants. We made a short documentary. I will share the link later. People in their families, together with friends, they discuss issues. And by creating these kind of interactive talk shows, this is how we get them to also take that up in their day-to-day conversations with their family, with their friends, and this is how we do this. We saw this one. I just wanted to show that why do we use radio and SMS? Well, these are the statistics for Uganda. 87% of people have a radio set, and 74 have a mobile phone. This is a simple mobile phone. This is not a smartphone. Compared to the other forms of media, if you want to reach most people, you will have to go for radio and simple telephones. I just wanted to get this. This is one of our guiding principles from Jürgen Habermas, where democratic public life only thrives where institutions enable citizens to debate matters of public importance. So the only way to get a functioning democracy is by its citizens being able to discuss issues together in such a way that it is not just rumors or just talk, but there's a strong background to what they are discussing. If we improve their knowledge and their way of talking, it directly impacts the strength of democracy. So this is what we are trying to do with this radio program. Just to show you, Andre, you already mentioned it. If we do a large project in Uganda, we have a network of radio stations which are distributed around the country, all broadcasting in their local languages. That is, in Uganda, there's a lot of different tribes with different dialects, and this is how we reach those local listeners in their local dialects. and also collect those opinions from across the country. This is just an example of the interface, the interface where presenters look at the screen and see in the different areas, different districts, what people are responding, what they are saying. And we also have them here on a map. If you see, this is part of Uganda, where people are asked, are you happy with the performance of your member of parliament? And they can say yes, no, or I don't know who my MP is. So we get a direct overview, and also the radio presenter on which areas feel better about their member of parliament than others. And that is, of course, a good start of a debate, but also a good data source to use during follow-up lobby and advocacy work. What we do with the raw data, we develop infographics or more readily available graphics that can show, well, this is the same question on the member of parliament, what people think about their members of parliament. And we use this in reports that are published by our partners. When we have a campaign ready, we collect all the data, we put them together in well understood and clear graphics, because we feel that that reaches those who make decisions way easier than showing them a huge table of results. So we try to work with infographics and with graphic design to get data across, especially in an African or in Ugandan context. There's very little interest to receive big reports with a lot of text. People want to see something and use it straight away. So this is what I wanted to show you about, well, how we work. And I would really like to hear, there must be aspects of this presentation which was a bit strange because I couldn't find the slides, that maybe you would like to know something more about. So I would really love to get questions on whatever I might have missed.
Wonderful. Yes, no, this is very interesting. I have two questions, but I speak too much, and so I pass the ball to my dear friend Monica. Monica, your remarks on the subject, please.
Yes, I would ask if you could maybe diminish the screen, Walter.
Yeah.
Because your presentation is still there so that we can see each other.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's very nice to see you. Well, I have to say that first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share this time and this knowledge with you. And thank you very much, Andrea, for putting it together. And I want to start with my own experience in Uganda, or on Uganda, not more than in, as like on Uganda. I don't know if you know, have you ever watched a documentary about the work of the World Bank and the IMF in Uganda, Nos Amis et le Banque?
Well, I've watched many documentaries, but I don't know if I've seen this particular one. From when is it?
Okay, so this was a documentary. It's like a real-time documentary done in 1997 on the work. first of all, of Uganda, right? And the work that the World Bank and the IMF were doing in negotiating services and loans and grants to Uganda. It was a negotiation between the Uganda central government and the multilateral organizations. And usually I cite this because it was very interesting. It was in 1997, right? And at the time, there was some conflict in the border areas of the country, the limits of the frontier areas of the country. And one of the part of this negotiation was done was to try to receive funds or to get funds and loans from these organizations in order to make the country work better, to improve some of the institutions and so on. And at that time, I could go on the documentary, but that's not the point. What I want to make one quick point about it. The main negotiation was about loans that the Uganda wanted for roads at that time, right? And for roads because they want to reach the frontiers of the country in an easier way. And the World Bank and the IMF say, well, you have that, and also it would be much more interesting if you would invest in education and some democratic institutions and strengthen some of these institutions and health. And actually, the initial request money was something about $30 million, and I might be wrong in terms of zeros and in terms of the numbers. And eventually, a couple of years later, the grant was considered, and it was $3 million for the diverse objectives. My point is not the documentary per se. I've been to Uganda 15 years later. It was, I think it was 2012 or 13, and for a more private reason. And I went to a wedding there. I had friends in Uganda, so I had the opportunity to visit the country. And then, of course, I took this opportunity to check what how I could compare, in fact, and for what I had seen the documentaries, things that had been implemented, and what I was seeing there. And actually, I have to tell, I was really shocked and disappointed to some extent, because what I found in Kampala and Tebe and the surrounding areas was a situation that was not much different than 15 years earlier, right? And I have to say that in terms of in democratic terms, the things that I saw there were quite I would say, questionable. My impression, again, my personal impression. And then I had the opportunity to use this material again more recently, and I went back to keep in touch with my friends, and then to check some reports on the democratic aspects there. And even during COVID time, they had a really harsh, let's say, imposition by the government, right? You know that they killed like 10 journalists in 2020. They withdraw. They kind of stamped or like killed some of the movements that were done there. Some come at protests, and they quiet down the society and the community. This is one thing that I have seen. Okay, and then on the other hand, and I have seen this very amazing way, and this is something that I'm not only me, but my husband who works technology, he's also has seen it and has worked a little bit with that, how to some extent a lot of the African economic and social and political life in not only in Uganda, but in other countries in Africa too, they were possible to happen. They had that kind of a locus or arena to happen with the advantage of the mobile phone, right? The mobile phone worked as an instrument, as you said, as a technology to advance to some extent marked instruments, marked elements that did not exist before, and possibilities did not exist because they commercialize and they do everything at the time I was there, at least, and what I have seen, what I have read afterwards, they did a lot of negotiations by credits in the phone, and actually they used to use phone credit as an exchange coin, right? And this is very interesting because the telephone or the mobile is something very democratic, like it's just an instrument, is a technology, and you can use it everywhere. But to some extent, you could not use it to demise the differences, the inequality, and I was wondering to what extent it really increased democracy, particularly considering the last couple of years, what we have seen there in the couple of years, right? So, and then I think I have first of all, one thing I would like to, and so my questions go like, given these two realities, one is this a very clever, unique, and inventive, or I think for Africa, and I'm not being patronized with Africa at all, but I think they were able to use an instrument or to use a thing that they even better than, for example, other countries around the world could use, and invent ways to use this technology to emancipate them in terms of like the market issues or other social issues. But I'm not sure about real democracy. And that's and on the other hand, you have this story that is like, well, it's still a very poor country, right? Poor, relatively poor, has done a lot of advances, but is still very much of a country that is based on gold and coffee economy, right? As like more than 50% of the GDP is basically and exports is gold, and it's still a country that it has a lot of difference. So I'm not. What I don't see, and I would like to, and this is not that I'm not questioning in terms of it's true or not, I'm just don't see because I don't know it. So it's my legitimate questions, like how actually, truly democratic is what you are showing us, and it's how much is contributing to this process. And today, in the current scenario, and first, and the other thing has this technology in terms of the government appropriation, has the government allowed to be appropriated even more, to continue to be appropriate, or has the government also used and appropriated technology to their own means, or to their own ends, sorry, to their own ends, and to what extent you see an evolution in society that has now set very deep roots and can continue progressing towards a more, let's say, liberal economy, but democratic system, and preserve it, or if it's just so, or if we are talking about something that is actually it's a very interesting thing, very good tool, but it's still not outreaching the majority of the population. And I say that because when I was there, I saw a lot of inequality, a lot of differences, and a lot of military police all over the place, in everywhere, and it was very strict. And I didn't see that much of a discussion on democracy. But as I mentioned when I started talking, it was I was there not with this purpose, right? But I've been looking at Uganda because of all these cases, and that I use in class, and because of Uganda went from like a very drastic and draconian dictatorship into what it is today. But I still have I would like still to see more. So one thing that I think a lot of what I'm asking is not about the technology per se, but it's about the Uganda and its use, and the Ugandan population using this technology to keep and to set deep roots in the institutionalized democracy, and being able to curb some of the negative externalities of a country that is based on natural resources, and that has a legacy of authoritarianism.
Yeah, thank you. That was quite a.
Hold on, just 1 second. I would like you. Okay, fine, but we're talking about regional planning here. Okay, so we're not talking necessarily about national politics. Okay, so I'd like you to be concise.
I will be concise. I
to-
think it's very interesting, especially because Monica has experience in Uganda. The second time you came, I'm not sure that when that was, but there's indeed an authoritarian government that is still being kept in place by a democratic system. As you know, that 80% of the population of Uganda lives in the countryside and is very unaware of the very basics of democracy. They vote still for the incumbent, for the president Museveni, not because of their democratic awareness, but because they get handouts. They get a piece of soap or some salt, these kind of things. So democracy, in that sense, works at a very basic level. If you go to the cities, Kampala, other bigger cities, that's where you will find the opposition. That's where you will find people who actually understand that their opinion counts. But for many observers looking at that, they feel, well, there's some kind of a battle between opposition or civil society and government. But if you go more into the rural areas, you do see that there's very little awareness on these things. The example you mentioned of the use of mobile phone, for instance, for payments, mobile money, that's what they call it. You can buy bananas on the street using your mobile phone. This is a locally developed or evolved technology. And that is the same in the same vein as we wanted to develop this technology, which builds on what is already there. There is already a very strong culture of radio use, like you saw in the statistics. The only thing that was not available is for many people to participate. So building on top of what already exists is definitely one of the key takeaways from our experience. I think the democratization effect is in a very basic form, getting people to open up, to participate, to understand that they have a place in society, that their voice counts. And by allowing them to participate in this institution, this democratic institution, like we saw in the quote, we see that radio, and especially interactive radio, can be a democratic institution. And by allowing people to participate within it, we create this effect where people debate among each other, but also feel that their voice counts. And we've done quite a lot of surveys or in-depth interviews to see how people react. How does it change their actual life listening to these radio programs? And how do they use the information they get in their daily lives? Do they discuss it with their family? Do they feel that they have more of an ability to speak out against a local government? And in that sense, we are not talking, like Andre said, about central government that is going to change or revolutionize, but people on a very local level being part of the debate and part of society. If you see the political structure in Uganda, it starts on a very local level. They call them the LC1s. It's a village level representative. If you can reach the LC1 by saying, I think as a village, we should start cleaning our village. That's where actual democracy also starts. That's where participation starts. So we're trying to target those local communities to become more engaged with politics and with public debate.
Great. May I just make a comment? I think you absolutely. It's great, the comments that you made, but just to think that yes, we to some extent I emphasized a little bit of the central government role, but I think it, and if there is, I think there is a direct connection between central, local, and regional, right? And it has the spillover in that case has to go to bottom up. Like if you starting with the LLC ones, and then it has to spill over and has to increase and reverberate, particularly in Kampala and in Entebbe, but particularly in Kampala, where you have the urban population, and you have all that, and it's like you have all these squatters and this like you have a huge community there, a huge population there, and that's what I would like to know, is there is the impact of this in the federal one, because if the radio is and making waves, and no pun intended, a little bit of a pun intended maybe, but anyway, see if the radio channel is making waves, so it might be eventually it will reach the central government, and how the central government is responding to that, either curbing it or how is it responding? It's very important. And this is you follows this example of the spring, the Arab Spring, or that actually was a lot of what happened there. All the protests and a lot of change was due to the use of cell phones, mobile phones, and it was a democratic movement too. Right. So in that sense, I think the two things are connected.
Yeah. If I just can comment on the local and the central government, it's what we do. The basic fabric is at these local communities to get them to speak out, to discuss things, and to try to hold their local leaders accountable or to speak out. Now, what we do, we do this in many different communities. If you see in Uganda, we have these 10 radio stations that reach every corner of Uganda, and getting in all this data from the different areas and bringing it together in a central database and creating like infographics that represent the wider community, the national community in that sense. These reports, this is what we take to the central government, to the ministries, to say like, okay, of course it's very difficult for all these local people to speak out to a ministry because there's no time for that. So we, as a tool, make it easier to compile all these tens of thousands of voices into one clear, simple infographic that we can use in this lobby campaign. So we don't go out there to lobby, but we have our civil society partner, for instance, this Nudipu, who is the umbrella organization for disabled people in Uganda. We give them the data presented in a clear graphic and say, okay, use this when you lobby for better ramps or for mental disability. And we see that reaches the central government. So somehow collecting everything from the communities, bringing it up there, because otherwise there's no channel to do something like that. So that channel, that's what we are.
Okay, great. Cool. I want to give space to Rock, because we are two commentators, so share it, right? Half and half. Rock, I don't know if you...
Okay, please, your comments. Be free to either speak in Portuguese or English, whatever.
My Portuguese is very well, it's like, no problem.
Bom, eu tinha combinado com o André, porque em falar em português, e vocês, o André e a Mônica ajudam a fazer uma tradução aí. já que...
Vamos fazer o seguinte, você fala um pedaço, eu passo e vamos fazer assim. Se você falar o texto todo, eu vou me perder, tá bom?
Tá bom, então. Bom, primeiro eu queria agradecer, né, o Walter, né? Realmente é uma experiência extremamente inovadora, né? Eu, especialmente, a gente tem ainda hoje no Brasil algumas formas de rádio que se estabelece uma série de relações ao vivo, né, com os participantes, mas essa questão de poder trabalhar os dados de forma consolidadas, né, de forma real, ou seja, em tempo real, né, é uma inovação que é bastante significativa em termos do resultado que isso dá, né, também, em termos da própria dinâmica, acredito eu, né, talvez possa falar um pouco sobre isso também, sobre como isso incorpora na dinâmica da programação, ou seja, do desenvolvimento da fala de vocês durante o programa e o convidado que vocês levam, né, como foi dito. Eu acho que pode, de repente, fazer uma questão. Termina isso aqui e eu continuo, André.
So, thank you for being here. Well, this is very interesting because we have like live radios in Brazil, but we don't have this kind of data gathering on time while the program is going on the air. And this is the results you're presenting are very interesting. And he would like to know, how is this relationship or debate between the radio programs and the data that comes in, that either how do they influence each other? Como que a programação e os dados influenciam um outro, né?
Yes.
How does the data influence the radio program? Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, the process of creating such a poll questions that those are the basics of the radio program. We develop these radio programs to revolve around the poll results. So together with the local civil society partner, we develop these poll questions in such a way that the results can help us do the lobby campaign. So so we have a certain goal in mind when developing a campaign. Now we train the radio presenters in analyzing or in understanding the data as they come in, and we make sure that it's not only the radio presenter, but we have one or most often two guests in the studio who are selected to discuss the issue at hand. So we, if it's about disability rights, we've had doctors or experts or civil society leaders, people from local governments to sit in the program and discuss the results. So I think that makes the conversation way more interesting for listeners, also not only because they can participate in the radio program, but they can also understand what other people in their community think about the same topic. So it creates a collective awareness of what is happening in the community. So maybe it will also help people maybe to change their mind because they feel like, oh, there's way more people who actually think differently than I do. Or, oh, I think the same as most people. So it creates within the society to create a data, a data bundle that people understand what their neighbors are thinking about something, and it helps them to to develop their own views as well. So in that sense, that's what we're talking about when we say a data-driven debate, instead of some pockets that are very different and people are living in their little circle. They now create a bigger circle where people understand what different people in the community think about a certain issue. So that makes the use of data during these debates valuable for public debate as well. That's something.
Roque, você quer que eu traduza ou deu para pegar?
Não, eu entendi bem.
Claro.
Eu entendo bem, o meu problema às vezes é a minha pronúncia aqui não é muito boa, então.
Não, beleza. Como você preferir.
E uma outra questão que eu acho que é interessante no trabalho que eu faço em relação a processos participativos, né? Eu entendo que a dimensão da comunicação é uma dimensão extremamente importante para as comunidades, ou seja, para fortalecer processos de pertencimento, processos de gerar, de poder dialogar, né, conteúdos locais, né, a história local, a memória local, né, que é um tema que esse nosso desenvolvimento aqui no Insper tem tratado, né, que é essa coisa de resgatar também, né, a história dos cidadãos aqui da comunidade, etc. E eu entendo que sempre essa dimensão é extremamente relevante, né, para criar esse processo. E aí eu te pergunto o seguinte, do ponto de vista da organização da rádio, né, quando tu pensa em organizar novo ponto do rádio, né? Como se dá essa relação dessa construção com as comunidades? Existe um processo também de tentar apropriar um pouco, levar conhecimento para as comunidades sobre o tema propriamente do rádio, né? Tentar trazer pessoas que são da comunidade para dentro do projeto. Enfim, nesse sentido que eu faço essa pergunta.
Okay, he says that in participative dynamics, communication is central, and local content and local memory and the feeling of belonging is very important when you're doing like local development. And this feeling of belonging is something very relevant. And how do the radios deal with this scale problem of, you know, dealing in general terms or addressing local issues and local specifics of each community? And if you, from time to time, you bring like key figures on these communities to talk, and if we, and like complementing his question, if we're talking about like one main pooling structure with radio, or we can have like another one just follow that goes more into local specifics.
Okay, let's see if I understand you correctly. It's of course important to speak about, when you do this kind of community building, to speak about local context. National issues, they become less relevant. So as you see in Uganda, there's like the different areas where we have different radio stations which cover their language group. So instead of covering the entire country, they just cover the area where people speak that particular language. So it's already, in Uganda they call tribes. So they focus on a certain tribe, which is already more local. Now, when we do a poll question on such radio station, we can ask people to indicate where, for instance, they are sending their message from. So instead of having the whole province, you see the answers per district. So instead, then you can focus more on like this district compared to the other district, have a different view of a certain issue, which can be interesting if you compare the two and use it in your debate, and also in creating these reports. Now, if you would want to focus even more, if you want to go more local, you could, for instance, use smaller radio stations that have a more of a district reach. So instead of reaching 100,000 people, they will just reach 10,000 people. And you can go smaller and smaller. You could even think of, instead of making broadcasting through radio, you could even put a small small machine where people can just press, for instance, at a health center, say, are you satisfied with the service? So the broadcasting system you can change. You can make a national radio that covers the whole country, more local radio stations, or even smaller broadcasting systems. That is no problem. Although I do think that, for our system, there's a good balance looking at these province-like reaches, because if you talk about radio, they have a wide reach, and you can't say, well, the reach of this radio stops at a certain border, because it's a transmitter, so it will cross borders as well. So you will be able to see where it reaches, and also extend past those borders. So I'm not sure if that is entirely the question you were asking, or if there's
and do you call like local representatives to make like specific talks about how does an issue applies specifically in that location? Let's say Rock is like some local politician from that municipality, and we're talking about a radio that gets a whole region with several municipalities, and Rock wants to talk about the specifics of that place that he belongs.
Isso. Deixa eu emendar então, já que posso, não sei se tem ainda um tempinho, tem, né? Em relação porque uma das questões que tu apresenta é a questão, vamos dizer assim, do perfil, né, de mídia de Uganda, que é onde o rádio tem uma expressão, né, majoritária, pode-se dizer, né? E a pergunta que eu ia fazer, aí já junta com isso, no caso do Brasil, né, se a gente fosse pensar nessa experiência replicada no Brasil, com um perfil de mídia que é um pouco diferente em relação a Uganda. Se tu entendes que teria mais ou menos o mesmo alcance do projeto, né, e mais especificamente, se a gente pensasse num projeto onde, por exemplo, atingissem comunidades específicas, né, como, por exemplo, Paraisópolis, que é uma área de baixa renda, né, de favelas, e que tem 300 mil pessoas morando, né? Eu queria que tu falasse sobre se seria possível fazer essa adequação, vamos dizer assim, do projeto dentro dessa, usando o mesmo tipo de sistema, enfim, tudo mais.
Okay, his question goes like, okay, we have this media profile in Uganda, in which radio is like the main vehicle to, broadcast information towards the people. But in Brazil, we have like different media profiles, and we have like different situations. he asks that, do you think that we could use this, your solution here in Brazil? I mean, in one hand, we could like reach rural areas, would be great, would be interesting. Like, but on other hands, maybe in like favelas or slums, like in large cities like São Paulo, we have like 300,000 people among 15 million people within São Paulo. So, do you think we could apply this methodology in this different demographic situation in which you'd have like a large community within a even larger community? So how can you create, and how does that territory could outspeak its own voice from within this like larger city?
Yeah, it's a very interesting and relevant question for Brazil, of course. I think the methodology or the thinking behind what we do, it stays the same, and you can just tweak the technologies you use. Doing a broadcast of something and getting individuals to give feedback, you can do in many different ways. And indeed, in East Africa, radio and SMS is the most popular and the most practical way to do it. If you would look at a context of Sao Paulo, for instance, yeah, we would have to see which media profiles apply there, and really see with an objective eye, because there's a lot of people, because we are all on Twitter and on Zoom and these kind of things, but sometimes we overlook that there's a lot of people who are not using all these fancy tools. So I do think that that in a context of Sao Paulo, for instance, we've done experiments in Somalia, in Mogadishu, actually, which is a difficult place to be, but Mogadishu is divided up in different neighborhoods, and Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. And we actually did poll questions where people could write down which neighborhood they were replying from, and you would actually see this overview based on the neighborhoods. You could also think like maybe if people are more on their social media, we can make a connection to WhatsApp or Telegram or other media that are widely used. The advantage with SMS in this case is that everybody has it, and we can make it free of charge for everybody. And we can also make sure that anybody who participates can only participate once, because after they participate in the vote, their number will be shut down and they won't be able to participate anymore. Of course, you could also do this with some technological tweaking and using, I would say, Telegram or Signal, because WhatsApp is very difficult to kind of tweak with. And use it in such a way. And then the mechanism would be the same. You need a broadcast mechanism. Maybe that is a podcast, or maybe that is a video channel, or whatever you want to make of it. And you make an individual kind of polling mechanism where you collect feedback and also give back that feedback. That's a very important part of this, that we are not researchers who are just collecting data and keeping it for ourselves for our research. The important part is that we collect the data and give it back to the community so that everybody knows what's going on. And I think that is the key to doing this. And yeah, like we can use many different technologies based on the specific context.
Wonderful. Monica.
let me just, okay, it's open. Open my mic. Walter, super interesting what you're saying. I still have some doubts with respect to so the issues that you deal in the radio are mostly daily and concerns and local concerns. You don't escalate it to political issues or a more broader mobilization of the population. And this is a question, right? And I also I know that there is a lot of restrictions and laws in Uganda, right? That the federal government somewhat has an iron hand and has persecuted some of the radios and the journalists. So to what extent you were able to avoid or to curb these things, this kind of, and become and not be captured by the other governments, and then if the idea is that you do less of this political movement, but you do more of like a daily information for public policy, then how do you work out this conflicts? If there is any conflict at all.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in the past year, you've mentioned it yourself, there have been elections in Uganda in 2021.
Yes, in January, right? It's
yes,
like
it was,
January
it
had
was
elections,
February, actually. And it was, a very politically tense period. Bobby Wine was, maybe you've heard of him. He's a rapper or reggae artist, but he is very popular among the youth, and it's a very youthful country. So he gained a lot of momentum before the elections happened. And before the elections actually were there was big riots in Kampala, where indeed I think 25 people died. A lot of people were taken.
I heard 50.
Yeah, well, there must be a lot of different numbers there, but it was very bad, let's say it that way. And during that time, we actually did a campaign on democracy and how people felt their position within democracy. If maybe the COVID, because there was a lockdown in Uganda, if the COVID impacted their way that they could vote, or if they how they measured the performance of their leaders in the past election period. And those are pretty political questions which might get you into trouble. What we do is we are always in the background. We are a tool, and we connect to existing structures. So civil society organizations, radio stations. We just facilitate the communication. We are not there in the front lines saying Track FM thinks that the government is not okay. So in that way, we have always been avoiding this kind of shutdown or repercussions from government, because we also don't feel it's our mandate to be in front, because we are we are a foreign organization that just that is just facilitating the debate. That said, we did this program, and after the elections, two of our partners we were working with were shut down. They were taken, their license was revoked. Radio stations, well, we know which radio stations to work with. We must say that some of them, they are more strict with different topics than political topics. In that sense, this political debate is pretty is pretty broad. You won't be shut down so easily on radio, and what we say to radio stations, it's up to them, right? If they feel they don't want to host that poll question, that they have the final say in it. Because if they feel it's too politically dangerous, but we haven't seen that so often. Even when asking people to rate the performance of their leaders, we could take that to radio. But I think the most important thing, what I want to say, how did we avoid getting shut down by government, is always to work as a facilitating a tool and a platform that supports in the background. Also, of course, we teach our partners and the civil society organizations, how do you use data for lobbying? How do you collect data that is valuable to your lobby? How do you because that is quite an art. It's not easy to think of where you want to go with your campaign in the end. So we have to take those partners along in developing an advocacy campaign. It's not like, oh, let's ask something interesting. It's like, where do we want to go with this? How can we collect the data that it's not leading, that we can still say, okay, this is objective information. And well, so that is what we do at first. When we start a campaign, we sit down with the partner and we say, okay, what are the goals of this campaign? And from there we start organizing.
Cool. I'm open to the public now. O público gostaria de se manifestar? Alguém tem alguma pergunta? Well, I'll make one then. Monica, would you like to say something? Yes. Sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Nice.
Okay.
I like your question.
Hold on. Okay. Walter.
But
please,
I give my place to someone else who has not talked yet, and if there's time, I'll ask. I really love that you brought Uganda. No, for me, it's so unique.
I wanted you to talk about overall numbers. I mean, like scale. So one pool, how many, what's the sample you gather from that, and which countries have been working with? We talked a lot about Uganda, but you've been in other countries, I know, in Africa, right? So if we can talk in general terms, so people can get to know a little bit more about your experience and how powerful your tool is. So, okay, we can gather 20,000 or 30,000, responses for that. And I would like you to talk a little bit more in detail about how it is to build that capacity when you're making a campaign. So there is this thing about going to a radio, talking with local leaders at village level, and then the whole thing a little bit more into detail. Then I'll pass to Monica again. Yeah.
I think there's two things which also tear me apart sometimes. It's on the one hand, the research. This whole thing started from research and theoretical thinking and experimenting. That is something that is very different from running an NGO, like running an organization, which requires HR and administrative things and all these things, and also gives more there's waves. Of course, there's sometimes if there's a lot of partners or funding, we grow, we expand, but that these kind of cycles sometimes they end after 2 years and then you contract again. Like in Uganda, because we have a very good presence there, we have an office, we have staff. we've always been working there. And then we have gone to other countries to set up similar projects. Those are in Somalia and Somaliland. We did quite a lot of work, which was very exclusive because it's really a very closed country. We worked in Kenya quite a lot. We did programs in Tanzania. We started in Burundi, then it was closed down because of political issues. And recently this year we started in Nepal, where we work with radio stations in 2 provinces of Nepal. Like the numbers, if we look at Uganda, we've done over 1,000 polls or radio programs where more than 2,000 people participate. So we have millions of responses, data that reaches like huge numbers. And what we see is that the longer you stay in a country, the easier it gets, because people need to get used to this system. They hear it and at first they think like, yeah, maybe it doesn't work. But later, if they hear these responses, they hear the results, more and more people catch on. What we also sometimes do when people have responded once to a poll, then the next poll, the next radio talk show, we can send them a reminder saying, oh, the radio program is about to begin. Please join. And then they tune into the radio station and know that this program. So it's the longer you are in a country, the easier it becomes to really grow those numbers. So those are the 5 countries we've worked in. We had quite a big program the past 3 years, and this is also part of the disability rights campaign, the land rights campaign, and the thing I was talking about democracy during the 2021 elections. Those were funded by a funder in the United States, who gave us a lot of opportunity to also experiment with this. We can easily develop our own programs, which allows us to do more experimentation. The other projects, which, for instance, are commissioned by a research group or a university that says, like, we want to know why people don't use fertilizer, that is way more strict, and we really have to just do the work, get the data, and produce it. So those are the 2 extremes in terms of the organizational part, where we have grants on the one hand, and we have assignments on the other hand. And we would also love to go to Brazil and also experiment in Brazil.
Yeah, it's great.
That is something where we would.
I bet you will. We'll be doing that very soon. Monica, please.
It's very interesting. I think the power of radio and communication, right? When you're talking about this power, the community, the power of the local community, being able to use this as an instrument, I was thinking of governments that actually, to some extent, captured totally local radios use the radio in a different way, or not as for sharing data, but sharing ideologies or whatever it is. For example, Castro and also Chavez, right, in Venezuela, they captured. It's very interesting. They used the radio initially for information and to some extent to bring people along, but then it became an instrument of just like a one-way technology of a one-way expression. And but my question is, like, if this data that you have collected data, you are doing polls and you are having collected data,
can you do the government have their own data, and can you confront and say like, well, our data is this, the government data is that, or is there this kind of difference or this confrontation first, and then is Uganda a country where you have a lot of data from official source, or there's very few data from official source, and then you are doing a public service more than everything, right? And so this is something I would like to know. Yeah. And I would like to thank you. It's just to say that it's very interesting because it's so unique, so rare to listen about Uganda and other African countries. That is very rich and nice to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Monica. It's nice that you say that. Yeah, so talking about data and availability in Uganda, that the big problem is that there's hardly any data available, or like the government does not do social research that much because it's most of the time it's expensive, and even organizations, NGOs, research groups, it is very expensive to go with your survey, drive to a village and collect data. So that's why it doesn't happen so much. What does happen a lot is that these NGOs, but also politicians or institutions, they claim to represent citizens. So they say, this is what's going on, or this is what people want, or we are developing infrastructure because that's the best for the country. But if we have the tool to actually collect the data from those villages, that shows that actually people are way more interested in healthcare than in this infrastructure, then that is something to counter all these claims for more investment in infrastructure, for instance. So I guess when there's no data at all, anyone with a bit of data will be able to claim to represent citizens more, because that is what happens. That's what politicians do, but it's also what NGOs do. It's what all kinds of people want to do, to say like, I represent the people because we live in a democracy. But in the end, they have not so much to back it up. Because I don't know about Brazil, but especially on certain issues, there's no data available in Uganda. So it's not a battle of data. It's more like people claiming things, and we can say we have a stronger claim in that sense. Is that what you were asking?
Thank you.
No, it's
yes,
wonderful.
I think, yeah, it's great. Very good. Thank you.
Carry on, Monica. Carry on. No problem.
No, I think it's great because you are actually, you have something that if people have access to information, is a very important thing. And it's very interesting to know, for example, what you mentioned, like, well, people wanted more like health and education, maybe than or health, you mentioned, than infrastructure. And so I think it's very, very interesting. And I wonder why the government there is not using it, because it should be using these channels too, right? And to counter, if there is any need. Maybe there is no need to counter whatever your findings, but your findings are very important, very strong.
No, it's of course it's also awareness, and that's sometimes difficult in such a country, if also in the political layers of society. Those are the older generation sometimes, who are not so much caught on to data or to these kind of structures. They are more, it's a different kind of society where there's charismatic leaders or people with a certain elite standards who rule by different means than data that we use. For instance, politicians here in the Netherlands, everything needs to be based on certain data. The whole structure in Uganda is different, but it needs sometimes it needs a shift in thinking about what does this data say, and we are trying, and that's sometimes an uphill battle to make this kind of politics more based on facts than on who is saying it, and I think that is different. You see that the more a country is developed, in a sense, I don't know if you are allowed to say that anymore, but the more they base their decisions on facts and data, and less on who is the one saying it, more or less on an authoritative on authority, more on facts. So that is something which is important to do. Like sometimes when we collect data through these phone SMS systems, of course we collect a lot of numbers, a lot of telephone numbers, and sometimes what we've done in campaigns is to actually randomly select some of those participants who voted in the poll, and give them a call back to do a more in-depth interview on why they think certain issues are the way they are, just to give some more context on, not just to have raw data, but to actually understand better what is behind some of their decisions. We've gone as far as to select different people from these callbacks to come to a radio program to discuss these things, to really make it even more participatory. So you can do a lot of additional things with the program. You can make it, you can even make people decide what the next question should be on radio. You can make it as difficult as you want, but the basics are the same.
This comes from my final remarks. I would like you to comment something. Are we in the front of in the realm of a new methodology? New methodology in planning, in which is more interactive, you can build together. Então eu gostaria que vocês comentassem, né? Também, né, Roque, será que a gente está frente a uma nova dimensão do planejamento? How does that kind of, instrument change the idea of planning, or the planning methodologies, or the potentials of planning? Como que esses instrumentos mudam, né, a percepção e o potencial do planejamento? So I would like you to make your final remarks along that line of thought. Queria que, né, os últimos pensamentos, as últimas observações fossem em torno desse pensamento. And I would like you to think about what is the role of memory and in terms of data building relating to that. E como que memória e a construção de dados se relacionam com isso. So I would like you to open for this last remarks. Walter, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thanks. It's an interesting question that blows it right open. But I think, indeed, if we see that technology is available, which used to not be available, that's why we had elections, just to choose who can represent you. Technology, everybody has a mobile phone now to give input into decision-making processes. But somehow we are stuck in a very old system where we just once in 5 years choose a representative and sometimes add some comments somewhere. but there could be way more if we look at the technological possibilities. Not that I say that we should go to like a direct democracy where every decision is based on the hands voted, but you could think of certain areas where there's experts or people who have presented themselves as representative, to at least open up this space for participation in decision making, because people are you see it all across the world. People are getting a little bit demotivated or detached from politics, and I think it starts with this public debate where people can come together and discuss things which are relevant, and discuss them in a relevant way, and from there you could build on a more direct democracy. I think people are misinformed sometimes, they are demotivated, they are influenced by very strange kind of media, and to create a way where the feedback mechanism is the community, can give you a objective view of what's going on, instead of building on media or lobbies, but just to get the whole community to chip into the discussion and let the discussion evolve from there. That is what I think is the basics of where we can go with this, especially with the technology available. Even thinking farther on a sort of artificial intelligence asking the questions, and people responding to those questions in this way, which is a bit far, but sometimes I'm there with my thoughts. But I do think that this kind of participation should be part of democracy, because otherwise we will just be caught in the same thing that we are in the one with most money, most power will make the decisions. If we don't take that back, then it's just going to go one way, and that one way I don't think it's the best way. So that's why I feel we should maybe take it back.
No, wonderful. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's very, very relevant. I mean, in terms of what we're living today, in terms of climate emergency and complexity and so on. So, Monica, your final remarks on that, perspective, please.
Well, I think first of all, I think that it's the work you do is very important, right? The work of bringing this information and collecting data in the areas where actually it's very hard to kind of enter or and bring from different places and now different countries. I think it's very important. I do think there is an aspect that you mentioned, Andre, about memory, right, and data building. And the things that both memory and data building can be very selective, and in the sense of like being the memory that of the winners, right, to some extent, and the data also can be to some extent manipulated, but only opening up the channels that you have and fighting for maintaining these channels. And if the way is bring it very local and whatever way it is, I think it's very important and legitimate. So I think you are doing very, very interesting work. I do think you have to share more. I saw your website, and I think it should be more shared with like all of us. I mean, sometimes we think that the radio and other is a technology that is gone, right? or it's like, well, maybe we don't use it anymore, but I don't think at all. I think it's a very important channel. And even if you have to use battery, we like like in Africa, use a lot of those radios that have like that you wind up, winding mechanisms, and it's amazing, right? But it's something that is important. So then I think you are doing a work for the global democracy, for the convergence on that. But I think we still have a long way to go, to tell the truth. And I want you to, I definitely, as André said, I think we should try to maybe do something like a panel on this kind of work in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, where it's actually these spaces are really necessary.
Thank you, Mônica.
Thank you.
Roque, sobre a tua perspectiva de mudanças de planejamento, construção, e fala que eu sei que você é craque nessa bola aí. Roque, você está com o microfone fechado.
Bom, eu queria dizer assim, ó, eu concordo que eu acho que é uma ferramenta que eu achei muito interessante, porque além do que é feito com ela, né, ou seja, além de ser interessante o fato de ter uma rádio interativa, e mais do que isso, que a partir de votações, e portanto trabalhando em cima desses resultados e tudo mais, que é uma inovação, assim, eu acho interessante pela potência que é essa experiência, né? Do ponto de vista, aí quando colocas da questão do planejamento, claro que existem uma série de possibilidades de interagir, né? Hoje plataformas e uma série de formas de interagir com o público, através, inclusive, dessas plataformas dialogando com as mídias sociais, né? Como já tem hoje várias possibilidades, né? Mas eu acho que o rádio também é uma estratégia diferente, porque tem um público, né? Do rádio, né? E de alguma maneira, né? Como eu acho que foi colocado, ele pode penetrar em alguns... se a pessoa não pode votar em determinado lugar, porque ela não tem o aparelho, mas ela pode ouvir o rádio, né? E ela pode, de alguma forma, ser influenciada ou também participar, de alguma forma, na relação com outras pessoas que possam ter, né? Então, tem essa inovação que eu acho interessante. E aí eu começo a olhar, por exemplo, né, aí quando falo de planejamento, a possibilidade, né, porque eu sempre penso essas ferramentas, né, de lá para cá, ou seja, como a gente poderia, a partir de trabalhar com as comunidades, gerar rádios comunitárias com essa perspectiva, né, dentro das comunidades periféricas no Brasil, né, e a partir... Por quê? Porque, às vezes, também a opinião ela é uma opinião que é reproduzida, né, por uma espécie por outras mídias dominantes, né, que eventualmente não vai trazer, vamos dizer assim, um processo mais emancipatório, mas pode haver também processos onde essa mídia dentro das comunidades, né, construída dentro das comunidades, com participação da comunidade, com aprendizado da comunidade em relação a essas tecnologias, né, gerar também perguntas que são da comunidade, né, e respostas da comunidade. Então, e esse eu acho que o grande interessante, esse potencial, né, disso que o Walter traz, né, e olhando um pouco diferente, né, a partir dessa perspectiva que eu trago, né, porque aí a gente pode fazer também a construção de uma verdade, né, e de impressões e de memórias, né, e tudo mais, a partir da perspectiva comunitária e com a riqueza toda de todo o diálogo que isso possa trazer, né? Eu acho que existem experiências de rádio periféricas e tal no Brasil, né? Mas essa ferramenta ela poderia ser também algo de novo e algo muito interessante para para promover, vamos dizer assim, um debate que vá além das coisas cotidianas, né? E aí eu acho que é fantástico, assim, como potência tudo isso que o Walter traz, e evidentemente a própria experiência é muito potente, né? Na perspectiva de um país que está colocada, né? Da possibilidade do diálogo, do voto, né? Mas, enfim, eu fiquei bastante impressionado e quero aqui mandar um grande agradecimento e uma grande satisfação de ter participado desse momento aqui.
So he says that
Translator.
what he likes the most is that, like, even if you don't have a mobile phone, you still can listen to the radio and participate and get influenced by, you know. So it's very touching, the idea of using such a widespread and democratic technology to talk and bring to the agenda important issues, you know, for the population. And that he also would like, you know, wonder how beautiful it would be to see that multiplying in communitary local radios made by, you know, local communities and kids, and creating their own, you know, debates and their own debates. And he also talks about the possibility of being not only local trust and overall trust, but also the idea of being able to sediment like memories and local and contextual truths, and what is true for a community and what is true for everyone, and for the bottom of the pyramid. And from that, building up the promotion of debates that goes beyond like day-to-day, you know, issues and matters, and start building really relevant, important, you know, political and citizenship work. And he thanks very much for being here, and well, and he thanks you for being here as well. Okay.
Wow. Thank you very much, all of you, for having such an interesting discussion, or your great questions, because yeah, those questions allowed me as well to actually go into what's interesting to go into. Like I said in the beginning, I'm very much yeah, I'm happy to get this kind of traction in your environment as well, to see that there's interest from people who are actually also working in this field, because it's by working together that we can probably develop more of this. And sometimes yeah, in a Ugandan context, it's more difficult to get that kind of traction, and I would love to continue hearing from you as well when you organize different lectures, or there's different other things to do within your group, to keep in touch on these things. And like Monica said, I'll try to share more from our side, because that's one of the things, of course, that yeah, you can be busy with so many things, but still keeping also that in check, that you communicate well and that you keep in touch with all the different parts of of what we're doing. It's sometimes difficult, but we will certainly try. I think that the best way would be that someday in the future we will all be together in a room somewhere, and we can actually talk face to face. That would be my wish to in the future. So I will try to work with that with Andre, and I would like to thank you very much for your great insights as well, and for being part of this series of lectures.
Thank you so much. I'll send you the link of this interview. Well, talk to you soon, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very
Monica, Rocky, and all the presents, thank you so much for being.
Also for the others, we didn't hear you, but good you were here. Miriam, Antonio, Lucita.
Yes.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.